think it's just really important for people who are interested in and working in accessibility and probably tech more generally to have a broader understanding of what disability is within the social context, because that's essentially who we are designing for, society and people. So we'll get into the social model of disability. There's actually a lot of models of disability out there, which is probably another 2 different talks. So I'll just talk about obviously the social model. It came into being probably about the early 1970s. It was a response to the institutionalisation of people with disabilities. So advocates wanted to replace institutionalisation with more opportunities for people with disabilities to experience social inclusion. It was considered radical because advocates under this model assert that people are not disabled by their bodies, which is what the medical model assumes. They are disabled by society. And by that they mean that the way society is constructed actually causes social exclusion, I should say, and not the impairment on the person's body. And there are actually barriers in place stopping people with disabilities from leading independent lives and participating in society. It also has it's heavily influenced in Marxism, so there's a bit of sociology coming in here. So Marxism assumes that social oppression comes from the ruling classes, whereas under the social model of the British social model of disability is actually a form of social oppression. So that model was probably predominant up until the mid-2000s, when academics wanted a change in the social model. They felt that it was probably too radical, and the fact that people encounter medical conditions related to their physical impairments, that was something that was overlooked by the British social model. So they wanted something that sort of, I guess, combined the medical with the social model. So in came the biopsychosocial model, and it's one that acknowledges physical impairment, but it actually places more emphasis on changes that are needed within society to help people living with disabilities to achieve full social inclusion and autonomy. And that means the changes being remove those barriers. It also assumes that people without physical impairments can also experience disability. And under this model, it happens when there is a mismatch between a person's personal situation and the external environment. An example of this would be a woman is in a violent relationship and she wants to escape it. And the only opportunity she has to seek help is by locking herself in her bathroom at 3 o'clock in the morning with her mobile phone to access a website for information on how to escape. But unfortunately, the website won't work on her phone because she's reached her data limit on the phone account and the site is inaccessible and offline mode. So the barrier for so this particular woman in this example is experiencing what we call like a social disability. So the barrier is the fact that the site is inaccessible offline. So the biopsychosocial part relates to this interaction and relationship of biological, psychological and social factors in understanding and the construction of disability. So in other words, disability is essentially socially constructed. And so when we talk about barriers to inclusion, what that means is they prevent full social inclusion for people experiencing disabilities under this model. And they can take the form of attitudes, biases and opinions, public policy and the physical environment. And these barriers are put in place mainly because our own biases or opinions are sometimes unintentionally the basis for our decisions. And this can sort of occur through a lack of engagement with people experiencing disabilities. And groups can be intentionally or unintentionally excluded. So intentionally they might be seen as unimportant, or unintentionally that it's just genuinely unknown that they user if it's technology. But they're important to acknowledge because these barriers can actually create an experience for these people that might range from mild annoyance to complete social exclusion. And in some cases, like with the domestic violence example, it's a matter of personal safety as well. A good example of a barrier is the marriage equality postal vote. So we all know the upcoming plebiscite, and it is in the form of a paper postal ballot that's been sent out through to people with details in the electoral roll if you're enrolled to vote. So the barriers to this particular plebiscite is the fact that it's a paper postal survey. So it was a rush. The barriers were constructed by politicians and public policy more generally, and it was a quick decision that was made really without much regard to the various groups by politicians. It was very much on the fly. But the ABS has since rushed to fix these issues. There are provisions in place for these diverse groups, but if those provisions were not in place, the excluded groups would be the blind and low vision people. So if you're blind and have low vision, you can't fill out paper form. People with mobility impairments, again, might have difficulty filling in a form, even getting to a post box to post the vote themselves. ESL, so English as second language people, might not understand what a plebiscite is or the nature of the survey. Homeless people, because they have no fixed address, so how they're going to receive a postal vote. Same with Aussie expats and people living in regional areas such as the Aboriginal and some members of the LGBTI community who are Indigenous as well. So hypothetically, if these provisions had not been put in place, then severe barriers exist that prevent these particular groups from exercising their democratic right, but also to have a say in issues that affect them directly and also their community as well. So ways to reduce or remove barriers is to sort of engage with some social inclusionary practices. So in particular with inclusive design. Inclusive design considers all aspects of human diversity. So it brings every possible edge case and scenarios to the centre and designs to those unique needs for an inclusive approach. Like the social model of disability, the biopsychosocial model, it acknowledges that disability is not a health condition, it's actually a mismatch between the needs of the user and their environment. It recognises social exclusion and restrictions to social inclusion. It's empathetic, so that if we empathise, we can clearly see the barriers to social participation from the individuals or the group's perspective. And by acknowledging our biases through inclusive design, and that is by keeping them at the door, we're removing biases to allow more room for empathy because, in my opinion, I think more empathy removes these constraints if we can put ourselves in someone else's shoes, like we were talking about before. So ways to do this, there's various toolkits available. So the ones I'll talk about are some Microsoft, Airbnb, and is it Paciello?
Paciello.
Thank you. I didn't check that before I started. I'm sorry. So these toolkits are really good. So the Microsoft one, it pretty much aims to fit in with your existing design processes, but can use them as an evaluative method to your current one, so you can develop new practices for design. And it also fits in with an iterative process as well. And Airbnb, theirs is called Another Lens, and it's aimed directly at designers specifically, not so much developers or content producers. So it's pretty much just a set of questions that kind of help you to see your own biases that can be used as you're designing. So you're thinking about the other person as you're designing, and again, it fits in within an iterative process as well. And Paciello's probably, they're more broader and heuristic. They're a set of design guidelines. Again, they can help to be used to develop new design processes or to complement an existing one. So why do it? Because you're creating increased access to your product or website. More generally, you're creating many entry points for people to access it. You're reducing frustration because inclusive design also increases usability more generally as well. You'll minimise or remove any barriers to social participation. So you're reducing disability for people within a social context. And overall, you're creating a more socially inclusionary experience